Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a topic that, well, it resonates with so many of us, whether you're just starting out or maybe feeling a bit stuck on that fluency plateau, mastering spoken English. What makes this particular deep dive so interesting, I think, is that our source material promises something quite different from the usual language learning advice.
Yeah, it does.
It outlines 5 powerful steps that will completely change the way you learn English. And it says they're crafted for smart learners to get real fluency.
Real fluency, that's the key phrase there, not just textbook knowledge.
Exactly. And what's truly compelling and maybe a bit counterintuitive is the bold promise.
Yeah.
Getting this fluency without living in an English-speaking country or spending years stuck in grammar books.
Right, which challenges everything we think we know about needing immersion, doesn't it?
It really does. So our mission today is to truly unpack these insights. Understand not just what these steps are, but why they're supposed to be so effective and how they kind of push back against our usual assumptions. Okay, let's unpack this.
It's a fascinating reframe, isn't it? Moving away from language as just like facts to memorize.
Yeah.
And treating it more like a skill, something you develop through, well, active practice. Less about just input, more about retraining your brain. That's the part I find really interesting.
I agree completely. And that first step they outline, it's presented as maybe the biggest mental shift. And it's something easily overlooked, but it makes so much sense when you hear it. Training yourself to...
Think in English.
Exactly. Think in English. The source calls it the biggest shift. And when you think about how most people learn, you hear English. Your brain flicks it to your native language. You think of a reply there, then translate back to English before you speak. It's like, ugh.
Like running Google Translate in your head, yeah. That's the analogy they use.
It is, and it's such a mental bottleneck.
Absolutely. And that bottleneck, that's what kills fluency. You know, natural conversation is fast. There's just no time for that double translation. Fluency needs immediacy, a direct line, thought to expression. So the core idea here is break that loop, train your brain to just stay in English.
Okay, but how? That sounds hard.
Well, it's not about like complex stuff right away. The advice is actually pretty simple. Start small. Just narrate your day inside your head, but in English.
Like, give me an example.
Like, oh, the kettle's boiling, or, I'm feeling a bit tired, or I really need to send that email. Simple things.
Okay.
But the act of forming those thoughts directly in English, even silently, that's the foundation. The source really emphasizes that even simple thoughts build the habit, and the payoff is huge. Once you stop translating, everything gets faster.
That really resonates.
Yeah.
You're turning passive thinking into active practice.
Yeah.
But it must feel awkward at first.
Yeah.
Like you're forcing it.
Oh, for sure. That awkwardness is normal. It means new pathways are forming. The key is just persistence and simplicity. Don't try to think about, I don't know, quantum physics.
Right.
Just describe your surroundings, your feelings, what you're doing. The simplicity is the point because it makes it sustainable. You build the habit. And that speed, that naturalness, it starts there. It frees up so much mental energy.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, clearing up that mental traffic jam. So once you start training the brain to think directly in English, what's next for, actually speaking? The source gets pretty active here.
Yeah, it does. Moving from internal thought to external action. The next strategy is something they call shadowing.
Shadowing. Okay, I like the sound of that. The source has this great analogy, right? Imagine you're watching a movie and you repeat exactly what the actor says. Same words, same speed, same emotion.
Exactly.
That's shadowing. It's vivid, like you're stealing fluency like an actor.
And the why is really key. It's not just mindless repetition. It's about training your mouth, your muscles, your brain to literally move like a native speaker.
Ah, the physical part.
Yeah, think about it. Speech uses muscles. There's rhythm, intonation, stress pattern. It's physical. Shadowing is like physical training for your mouth and ears. You're practicing the exact movements, the sounds, the music of the language.
So how do you actually do it?
Practically, the source suggests picking short clips, like 10 to 30 seconds of video or audio. Listen really carefully, pause, then mimic the line exactly.
Exactly, including the emotion. That's the bit I found really interesting.
Exactly. If the speaker sounds surprised, you sound surprised. If they whisper, you whisper. The source says it's about performing, not just speaking.
Performing.
Because that forces you to notice the nuances. The pronunciation, sure, but also the stress, the ups and downs, the pauses, things a grammar book just can't teach you. You internalize the flow.
Right. It stops sounding robotic.
Precisely. It makes it sound alive, authentic, it's immersive, almost kinesthetic. You're bypassing some of that slow analytical stuff and learning by imitating mastery. It's a direct path to getting that natural rhythm.
That makes so much sense. It's like making the abstract rules physical. Okay, so speaking of sounding natural, the source points out this really common mistake. Something people do when trying to piece English together.
Oh, yeah. This is a big one. So many learners focus on memorizing individual words, just lists and lists of words, thinking they'll somehow magically combine into fluent sentences. But the source is super clear. Fluent speakers don't really speak in single words. They speak in phrases.
Phrases,
Wrong.
like building blocks. It's like trying to build a house just by collecting bricks, one by one, without knowing about walls or doors.
Exactly. If you just have words, you're missing the structure, the patterns. The soul says, think of phrases like tools, ready to grab and use without thinking.
Tools you can just grab. I like that.
Yeah. And these aren't random words stuck together. They're chunks of language native speakers use automatically, little prefabricated units. The source gives great examples like, I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
Or, that makes sense. Or maybe, you've got to be kidding me.
Things you hear all the time.
Right. Really common stuff. And when you use these, your English instantly sounds more fluent, more natural, even if your vocabulary isn't huge yet.
That sounds like a massive confidence booster.
Yeah.
A shortcut, almost.
Right.
You don't have to build every sentence from scratch.
Yeah.
But where do you get these phrases? Just listen.
Listening is key, yeah. Pay attention to how people actually talk. In conversations, movies, podcasts, not just formal writing. But then you gotta be active. When you hear a good phrase, don't just nod. Note it down.
Okay.
Make a phrase book, not just a word list. And then, this is crucial, use them. Trying to weave them into your own speaking or writing, like within 24 hours.
Use it or lose it.
Basically, yeah. That active use turns them into those tools you can grab. You sound more authentic, you feel more confident, and it smooths out your conversation because you're not pausing to assemble every single word. It frees up your brain power.
Right. You can focus on the meaning, not just the mechanics. Okay. Now, this next piece of advice, honestly, this one feels like the toughest for a lot of people, especially perfectionists, maybe. It's summed up as, speak ugly, speak often.
Yeah, this one hits hard. It goes against our instincts, right? We want to be good before we perform.
Totally.
But the rule here, straight from the source, is blunt. You have to speak before you feel ready.
Before you feel ready? Oof.
Because most people wait. They wait until they think they can speak perfectly, or at least not make mistakes, not embarrass themselves. But the source says that moment never comes.
It's a trap, isn't it? A perfectionism trap that leads to silence. You never actually practice the main skill.
Exactly. You get stuck in your head, scared of mistakes. How do you break that? The source uses a great analogy I loved. Learning guitar.
Okay.
You don't wait until you know how to play before you pick it up, right? You strum badly at first. You make horrible noises.
Definitely.
But you get better through playing badly. Language is the same. Every single time you open your mouth and try to speak English, even if the grammar's wonky or you forget words or your accent feels weird, you are training your brain and your mouth, building connections.
So it's about embracing the messiness. Seeing mistakes as part of the process, not failures.
100%. The mantra is, the only way to speak well is to speak a lot, even if it's messy, especially when it's messy.
Wow.
It's fundamental to skill learning, not just language. You learn by doing. And those first attempts are often messy, but every messy attempt is practice, it's feedback, it builds those pathways. It's a powerful call to just start talking. Don't let fear stop you from doing the very thing you need to do.
That feels liberating, actually. Redefines progress.
Yeah.
Okay, which brings us to the final strategy. And this is something the source says most people never do, but it's transformative. Go deep, not wide.
Right. This one tackles a huge misconception about fluency. Most people think fluency means knowing, like a massive vocabulary. 10,000 words, 20,000, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, totally intimidating.
But the source flips that and says, fluency isn't about knowing 10,000 words. It's about knowing 1,000 words really well and using them in real situations.
1,000 words really well. Okay, that sounds manageable. A huge relief, actually. But what does knowing them really well actually mean? More than just recognizing them.
Oh, much more. It's about moving from passive recognition, like seeing a word and knowing what it means, to active automatic use. You can pull it out and use it correctly without thinking hard.
Got it.
So the advice is, stop trying to learn every new word you see. Instead, pick a small group, maybe just 5 or 10 words at a time, and go deep.
Go deep how?
It means engaging with them in lots of ways. Use them in sentences you create yourself. Listen for them actively when you're watching or reading something. Say them out loud again and again. Use them in actual conversations. The goal is to make them yours, to own them so they're just there when you need them.
So it's not just knowing of the word. It's internalizing it so it becomes part of your active toolkit, ready to go.
Exactly. The efficiency must be huge for actual conversation. The source uses another great analogy here. Think of fluency like swimming. You don't need to touch every part of the pool. You just need to know how to stay afloat confidently with what you've got.
Ah, I like that. Functional mastery, not just collecting facts.
Precisely. When you go deep, those core words become automatic. Your communication gets smoother, more confident, because you're not constantly searching or translating. It makes learning way more effective than trying to spread yourself thin across thousands of words you barely know. Avoids that jack of all trades, master of none problem.
Wow. Okay. This whole deep dive, it's really given us a fundamentally different way to look at getting fluent in English, hasn't it?
Yeah.
The source makes it so clear. It's not about perfect grammar, not about tests. It's about functioning in English thinking, reacting, and expressing yourself without fear. Moving past just understanding into, like, real confident use.
And what's really cool is how these 5 steps aren't just random tips. They build on each other. They create this whole surprisingly logical approach.
Right. It kicks off with that internal shift. Start thinking in English.
Then you add the physical practice. Shadow native speakers like an actor.
Then you build your practical toolkit. Collect and use real natural phrases.
And crucially, you get over the fear. Speak, even if it's ugly. Speak often.
And finally, you focus your energy for real mastery. Go deep with a few words instead of wide with too many.
You know, what's really fascinating, if you step back a bit, these aren't just language learning tips. They feel like principles for learning almost any skill.
That's interesting. How so?
Well, think about it. Embracing imperfection, deliberate practice, focusing deeply, applying things immediately. What happens when you apply that mindset consistently? Whether it's English or coding or playing music or anything, things start to become automatic, natural, fluent.
Yeah.
This isn't just about English fluency. It touches on the nature of mastery itself. So maybe the final thought to chew on is, what other areas of your life could benefit from this kind of approach? You know, active practice, focus, depth, instead of just passively consuming information or trying to do too much superficially.
That is a really powerful thought. Puts the whole thing in a much broader context. So if you've been feeling stuck with English or maybe any skill, these strategies we've unpacked today, They might seem counterintuitive, but they sound incredibly effective. Definitely worth trying. Stop waiting, start doing. Get ready to actually function in English and maybe beyond. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.